Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I want to welcome a special guest first. Can you go ahead and say your name and where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Gary Sprouse, aka the Less Stressed Doc, and I'm from Maryland, right across from Annapolis, down near Washington, Baltimore, down that area.
Okay, and tell me about your past leading up into your present and what we talked about, you know, behind the
Yeah, sure,
stage.
yeah. So I became a primary care doctor after going to school in Washington D.C. and I worked out in Maryland, and it was in a rural area, and I worked there for 38 years, and I was a primary care doctor, so I saw all kinds of patients for high blood pressure and diabetes. And then a couple years ago, I was able to retire, which has been I really enjoy that. I'm having a good time in my retirement. So,
So tell me, what is it you would like to discuss as far as your book or how
Mhm.
you feel?
so I wrote this book called Highway to Your Happy Place: A Roadmap to Less Stress. And what I found was in my patients, they had all these medical problems that I would see them for: high blood pressure, diabetes, but they also had all these psychological problems like depression and anxiety and sleeplessness and difficulty with their appetite and ulcers. And what I realized was these stressful things were causing physiological problems. They were causing physical problems in these patients. And I read an article that said if I send a person to a psychologist, there's a 75% chance that they're not going to go for whatever reason. And so I learned, hey, I could either send them knowing they're not going to go, or I can figure this out myself. And so I had some insights that allowed me to really help my patients with their psychological issues that made me weirdly a holistic doctor. I'm like, wait, what? I'm a holistic doctor? No, I am, because
What is a holistic
yeah, right.
doctor?
So here's what it is, right? So I had a patient the other day. She was calling me and she goes, my shoulder's hurting and I get really upset when they're in pain, and then I get in trouble with my boss. And I'm like, so as a holistic doctor, I can go, okay, well, let's deal with your shoulder pain before you get upset, so that then we can deal with your anger issues so you don't get mad at your boss and he yells at you and fires you. So I could handle both sides of the equation. Or as another example, like some patients would come in with symptoms like they couldn't sleep and they felt like they were overwhelmed and they think they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know how to handle it. And so as a doctor, you could say, well, okay, this is either you're depressed and you need a medication because you're chemically imbalanced in your brain, or, oh, wait, maybe you're overwhelmed and you just have too much stuff on your plate. So let's figure out a way to get rid of some of the stuff on your plate so that then you won't need a medication.
And how do you eliminate that?
Well, that's the beauty of being a holistic doctor is you can say, okay, we're going to do some tests to make sure it's not a physical problem. And then if we're left with, and at the same time, we're going to deal with some of these psychological issues, these problems that you're having in a way that we can help you. So we're going to treat both problems at the same time.
Give me an example.
So I had a patient that came in, he was 80 years old. His wife was getting dementia and his kids brought him in and they said, our dad's depressed. And you're like, what's the matter? And he goes, he's yelling at mom and he's frustrated and he gets mad at everybody and he doesn't want to do anything anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, let's sit back and figure this out, right? So it turned out as an 80-year-old, he was used to being independent, doing all the things for himself. And he was used to his wife being there to help him out. Well, now she has dementia, which is incredibly frustrating. So he's living with this lady whose brain doesn't work right. And so he was frustrated. He was facing his own mortality because now his arthritis was acting up and he couldn't do some of the things that he used to do easily. And so he was losing his independence and his health at the same time. And so what I realized was this guy was not depressed. He wasn't chemically imbalanced in his brain. He just had too much crap on us. He had a lot of grieving going on because he was losing his wife, his health, his independence all at the same time. So he's just overwhelmed. And when I said to him, you're not depressed, you're overwhelmed, you could see that he went, oh, that's exactly right. I don't feel sad. I don't feel bad. Like, I just don't like the way, I got too much crap that I'm dealing with. And his kids finally said, oh, that makes sense. And so instead of giving him a medication, we talked about how to eliminate some of the issues that he was dealing with. And then he was much better.
So basically, you gave him the leeway to eliminate the issues that he was dealing with. You gave him issues to eliminate,
Well,
things to
instead of
eliminate.
saying he was depressed and chemically imbalanced and he needed a medicine for the rest of his life, what I said to him, you have too many problems to deal with. So I gave him very specific tools on how to deal with some of these problems so that he could reduce the amount of stress that he was feeling, so that let him get past below the threshold of being overwhelmed. And once he wasn't overwhelmed, then he could handle stuff.
Okay. Can like for instance, what is another example you can give? Like
Okay.
I love the example, the first example
Mhm.
about how he lost everything, you know, his wife had dementia and everything. However, give me some more examples.
Okay, so I've just been dealing with a lady who's 18 years old, and she had been sick for a couple of weeks, and so she was afraid to go back to school. And I was
Mhm.
like, "So what's going on?" So it turned out she's anxious, and she's having panic attacks, and she's getting stomach pain, and she's lost 20 pounds. So again, as a holistic doctor, I have to say, okay, well, is there a physical reason why this is happening? Does she have an ulcer? Does she have some kind of cancer? Does she have some kind of bowel obstruction, right? Is there physical problems going on? So there's a series of tests that we did. But at the same time, we were like, okay, what stresses are you having? So it turned out that, you know, she's having some of the normal stresses of an 18-year-old have, which is actually pretty crazy. Like, what am I going to do with my life? What kind of partner am I going to have for the rest of my life? I'm going to have to leave my home of 18 years to go to college. Right? It's like social issues with her friends. You know, her parents are having their own marital issues. And it's like, these are all things that all 18-year-olds deal with, and it can be overwhelming. And then on top of that, she had some episode a couple years ago where she had someone had, I mean, how to put this? They kind of drug her into their car, and she was able to get away, so nothing bad happened. But that led to a traumatic memory for her. And so what we did was then separate it out. So it turned out she did have an ulcer, so we put her on medicine for that. So then she was able to eat and gain weight. Then we dealt with some of these panic attacks, social issues, blah, blah, blah. And as we dealt with those things, so she just called me yesterday going, Dr. Sprouse, I had such a good day yesterday. I ate my whole meal. Everything was great. I made up with my friend. Like, I went to school, didn't have any problems, didn't have to worry about my mom. And it was like, yeah. So by treating both problems at the same time, she was much better.
Wow. 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 How do you feel about your success in what you do? How do you feel every day in helping people and how you help people through your holistic ways?
Well, this has been my purpose in life for a long time now. As a doctor, my job was to make people healthier and happier. At the time, I used prescription pads and tests and things like that. So my purpose hasn't changed. Now I make people happier and healthier, but now with different tools. So now I use my realistic optimism, my worry organizer, my leaky sponge, my Sprouse methods, and I use a book. So just different tools and techniques, but the same purpose in life. And yeah, the reason I do it because it makes me feel good. But what makes me feel good is when other people feel good.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to share in regards to everything you said previously to my audience that will help them see you for you that you haven't shared?
Sure. So, so one of the things that I found was that a lot of people wish they didn't have stress. And what I say to them is that's a false dream. Like, you're never going to get rid of stress, because stress is our changing environment with our changing self and the interaction. So as I'm trying to adapt to my changing environment with my changing me, because I'm not the same as I was yesterday or the day before or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'm changing all the time. My environment is changing all the time. And that interaction is where stress comes from. So you literally can't get rid of stress until you die. And my goal is to not get to have people deal with their stresses way before they get to that point, right?
You
So
remember what I asked you? I was like, why don't we create a drug to kill stress instead of, taking pills that suppress the issue? But yeah. How do
right.
you
So
feel
you
about
say literally you can't get rid of stress. So the best that you can do is manage your stress. But to manage your stress, you have to know where it's coming from. So if you just say, well, I lost my spouse, well, what am I supposed to do about that? You can't bring your spouse back. I mean, it's like, and you're not ready to get a new spouse. It's like, what the heck are you supposed to do in the meantime? Well, what I found was that the majority of human stresses are because of our skills. So we have these incredible skills, like we can envision a future. That's amazing, right? Like we can say, oh, next week we're going to have a snowstorm and then prepare for it. What? That's incredible, right? But that same skill that allows us to prepare for a snowstorm also makes us worry. That's the side effect. So the side effect of being able to envision a future is that you then have to worry about it. So I have a 1-year-old grandson, and he doesn't have the ability to envision the future yet. It hasn't come yet. So guess what? He literally can't worry because he doesn't have that skill. So he doesn't have the side effect. The problem is you need that skill. So he can't take care of himself. He needs somebody else to take care of him who can envision a future, because he doesn't sit at the dinner table going, Dad, how are we going to pay for college? Like, it doesn't come up. He doesn't know that. He doesn't even know what college is, right? So he needs somebody to kind of take care of him. So when psychologists tell us we'll live for today, you're like, well, that's a nice thought. It's not possible. We spend way too much time in the future. What I say to people is like, look, I want you to be able to have the skill of envisioning the future and get rid of the side effect of worrying about it. And so I have a couple of tools that I use to help people do that. But that same thing goes along with our ability to determine right and wrong, which then comes along with the side effect of guilt, or the idea of having choice, which then leads to regret, or the idea of having good and bad, where it leads to the idea that we have good self-esteem and bad self-esteem. Or like I have a dog, right? And she handles one problem at a time. She's hungry, she's eating, she needs to go to the bathroom, she's at the door. A dog comes into the yard, she's barking. One problem, that's it. But we can handle 10 problems at the time. Well, that gets us overwhelmed. And then it's like, whoa, now what do? I got so many things going on. I don't even know where to start. And so I have some tools that
How did you create your book?
So the book started out as a way to have less stress, saying things like, okay, here's what worry is, here's what guilt is, here's what regret is, here's what boredom is, here's what self-esteem is, and here's what overwhelmed is. And then here's the side effects, and then here's some tools to get rid of it, right? But then when I said to patients, hey, if you didn't have so much stress, where would you be? And they were looking at me like, well, I don't know, I never really got that far. I only thought about having less stress. And I'm like, well, so patients would say to me, well, I know where I don't want to be, but I don't know where I do want to be. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. So then I started writing the other half of the book, which is your happy place. And what I found was that everybody's happy place is different. And I use my wife as an example. So I like to go to the beach, right? My wife thinks the beach is the big kitty litter box. Yeah, you got it. Right? I was like, this is going to be an issue, right? So our happy places are real different. So here's what I found was that as I started exploring what a happy place is, I think of it as a house with rooms, and everybody's house has the same rooms. They just decorate it differently. So, they might have different paint or different rugs or different paintings, whatever. So they're different, bigger, or they're small. So when you look at the rooms, and I'll give you real quick what the rooms are. So it's feeling contented. It's feeling gratitude. It's having a purpose in life. It's feeling fulfilled. It's feeling pleasure. It's anticipating pleasure. It's feeling controlled and feeling a sense of connection. It's feeling accepted and appreciated. It's having feeling of spiritualness and feeling safe.
Do you have a big circle, a small circle? Do you teach, how to let go and be around a more positive environment?
Well, that's my goal. So my goal is to teach people. So the book is one place. I also have like an online course, and I'm just getting ready to start an online a Facebook group to help people that have addictions. Because what I found was that when people are having a lot of stress, they do things to reduce their stress. So they might exercise, or they might meditate, or they watch TV, or they read a book, or they go for a walk, or they drink alcohol, or they smoke cigarettes, or they do heroin. All those things work. The problem comes when the stress reducer that you pick to reduce your stress starts causing stress. It becomes a stress producer. Now you end up in this loop. So I really want to change the world. Instead of saying you have an addiction, what I want people to say is you have a stress reducer loop where your stress reducer is causing stress. So the answer to that, so when you have a disease, well, how do you fix that? We don't have any tools to fix a disease. When I say, hey, you have too much stress and the stress reducer you picked is causing problems, now I have a way to deal with that. I can say to people, okay, let's find out where your stresses are coming from, and let's see which ones we can get rid of. And second,
Do you think normal people have stressors too?
yeah. So
You
here's,
know what I
so I had
mean?
a patient. So I took care of patients. I had 100 patients that were using heroin for their stress reducer, and I took care of them, and I had a 95% success rate of keeping them sober. Okay.
Mhm.
Which the national average is 20%. So I'm getting 95%, having people come to my office once a month, and I'm getting all that success. How's that possible? Well, the reason was because I'm treating the problem in a different way. I'm not belittling them and ostracizing them and stigmatizing them with this lifelong disease model. What I say to them is, you're normal. And first thing they look at me and they go, what? Come on, give me a break. Like, I am not normal. I'm like, you are normal. You had stress. You found a stress reducer, and the stress reducer is causing problems. And now you're coming to me going, hey, I need to get off this thing because it's causing problems, right? So when they see themselves as normal, that's already a big. They want to come to get help. They're not going, oh God, I have to go there. Like, they want to come because I'm helping them. Second is we go, okay, tell me where your stresses are. So some of them have traumatic memories from the past. So I learned how to do hypnosis, and we've helped them deal with that. Some of them had ADD, so we helped them with that. Some of them had anxiety disorder, so we helped them with that. And so, like, by dealing with some of the issues that were leading to their stresses, then they didn't have the stresses. So guess what? They didn't need that anymore. Second was, some of my patients would come in and go, let me get this straight. So what you're telling me is, like, I have stress and I use heroin, and then I don't have stress, but the heroin then causes stress. So then okay, yeah. And I go, that's the stress reducer loop. He goes, my sister has a stress reducer loop. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, so my sister, when she's stressed out, she goes shopping. Now, right now, her closets are full, her credit cards are maxed out, her husband's yelling at her, and that stresses her out. So she does go shopping. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. So now, as a primary care doctor, I don't have to guess what that person's feeling. I have to go, oh, let's see, you have heroin. Like, what are you? No, because I go, look, when I'm stressed out, I'm on a diet. I'm trying to lose weight. And when I'm tired and exhausted, my car drives into the local convenience store and I'm eating a chocolate donut. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't want to eat a chocolate donut. Oh, but my brain said, hey, when you're stressed out, go eat a chocolate donut. I don't care if you're on a diet, go eat a chocolate donut. Guess what? That's the exact same process that goes through someone that has heroin or alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or whatever. So my stress reducer
So
loop.
how do you cut it out? How do you do it? How do
Right.
you
Well,
like?
so then the question is, how do you do that? Well, number one, the less stress you have, the less exhausted you are, the less likely you are to go do it. Second is, I've learned how to find other things to reduce my stress. So I was doing a smoke ending class, and they were giving up cigarettes. So I was like, well, all right, well, I need to give up something. So I said, well, I drink Diet Coke, and I would drink 6 or 7 a day. That was my stress reducer, right? I said, I'm going to give up Diet Coke. And they all looked at me like, yeah, no way. You're not going to do that. You drink too much of it, blah, blah, blah. And so I started drinking water instead. And what happened was, it was boring. I was like, ugh, this isn't good, right? I discovered a flavoring called Mio. So now I use my water and put a flavoring in there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now I haven't had a Diet Coke in 20 years. My wife drinks Diet Coke, and it's sitting right next to me on an 8-hour trip. And I don't care because I don't feel deprived. And I have an alternative that works just as well as, and I don't need Diet Coke anymore. So it was easy, right? What I found is when people feel deprived, then it makes it hard.
We all have meditation techniques. Can you tell me your favorite meditation technique that you teach people?
Yeah. So the one that I use that I like, I learned when I was in college. I took an acting class because here's what I decided. If I didn't get into medical school, I could go be on a soap opera and be a doctor there, right? So I decided better do acting, right? So one of the meditations they taught was this exercise where you're sitting in a relaxed position, and what you're doing is you're feeling the tension.
Hold up. Before you do that, I want everybody out there to do it
Okay.
with them. Okay.
All right. So you're sitting in a comfortable position. You can close your eyes. That's how I think it works best because you want to decrease the stimulus.
Don't start clowning me while
Yeah. So leave your eyes open. You don't need them closed. And so what you're trying to do is envision all the tension in your body leaving out through your fingertips and through your toes. So you're feeling all this tension go out. And what you're left with is your muscles, and they're so heavy because there's nothing to hold them up. They heavy that you can't even pick them up. And so this relaxation comes because all the stress energy is leaving your body through your fingertips and your toes, and your muscles are so heavy you can't pick them up, including your face.
That sounds like a spiritual or some type of technological type thing.
Well, I think they all get us to the same place. So I just read the stuff about this. In our brain, we have this thing called theta waves. They look at it with an EEG. And so meditation, transcendental meditation, yoga, prayer, relaxation techniques, hypnosis, they all get us to this place where our theta waves are the predominant wave. And in that state, we are relaxed, we are calm, we feel safe, our adrenaline levels are down, our cortisol levels are down, we're more creative, we're more able to reframe things from the past, right? It puts us in a very different state. So you're awake, but different than being, at your workstation, right? And so I think that all those techniques all get us to the same place.
Okay, and how do you gain momentum, or what do you feel the future is for what you're doing?
Well, so my goal is to get these ideas into as many people as I can, because I can write the book. I use the book for myself. Trust me. I've had plenty of stresses in my life. Being a doctor, you're under a lot of stress because you have boards that are monitoring you. You have malpractice suits. You got insurance companies yelling you. You got hospital administrators yelling you. You got patients with life and death decisions that you're waking up at 2:00 in the morning. So I have a crazy amount of stresses in my life. But by using the techniques that I've used, I've been able to manage them very effectively, right? And so what I want to do is say, hey, how do I get these tools to other people so they can live in their happy place all the time?
And if you had to give a person a piece of advice out of everything you said to my audience, period, what would it be?
Yeah. So the thing that I say to people is, look, I know that people are stressed out and they're overwhelmed and they got too much stuff going on, and they think that's the way it's just going to have to be. And here's what I'm here to say. You do not have to resign yourselves to being overwhelmed or being stressed out. It doesn't have to be like that. But you have to do something. You can't just sit there and hope that my stress is going to go away. You have to do something. And what I say to people is, you're getting an outcome in your life, even if you don't like it. But to get a different outcome, a new outcome, one that's better, you're going to have to do something different to bring that about. And so what I say to people is, read my book, because that'll give you a different way of looking at things so that you won't feel the same amount of stress that you felt before you read the book.
How do you break, like, one last thing, how do you break old habits, like, for instance, cursing? What, you put like money in a jar?
Well, there's a whole book written on how to change your habits, right? And in general, what they talk about is one of two ways. You either just, like, if you're used to, like, as I said, drinking Diet Coke, you just go, not drinking Diet Coke ever again. But then you have to put a substitute in. So if you substitute for something else, and then that becomes what you do, and just make sure it doesn't cause the same problems that the first one did. The other way to do it is gradual. So if you want to exercise, you don't have to start by going, hey, I'm going to jog 5 miles today. No, what you say is, I'm going to put my jogging shoes on today, which then makes it more likely that you'll jog. And then you go, I'm going to just do 2 steps today. And as long as you do 2 steps while you're on the treadmill, you're like, wow, maybe I should do more. And so what you do is kind of gradually build that up. And what that does then is it changes your identity. So if you say, if before you start exercising, like, I'm just a couch potato, then you start jogging, now you're up to 1 mile, 2 miles, and you're like, oh, wait, I'm an exerciser. That becomes your identity. And so that feeds into, I'm going to exercise. Because if you're an exerciser, what do? You exercise, right? So what happens is that identity then feeds the habit so that you continue on. And physiologically, what you're doing is making a track in your brain that has a connection between that trigger goes to that behavior. And so what happens is you make those anatomical connections. The firmer you make them, the thicker they get, the more likely they are happen automatically.
You know, I always say to myself, I procrastinate and I'll be like, I'm going to the post office and I never go, but I sat up there and I buckled down. I was like, I'm headed to the post office. So I went there and I took care of my business. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you become not a procrastinator. So why? So this is what I found with my stress reducer loop. I don't want people to think of themselves as an ex addict. I want them to think of themselves as normal. That's a whole different identity. Like as an ex addict, you have to go, oh, hey, I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic. And you're like, wait, what? When's the last time you drank? And they go, I don't know, 20 years ago. And you're like, well, why are you still identifying yourself with something you didn't do for 20 years? Stop. Like you're just normal. Like sometime in the past, you had alcohol as a stress reducer, but you're not doing that anymore. You're doing
Then
something
why
else.
do they put it in a DSM-5 in psychology as a label for everybody?
Because that's all they know. They don't have the stress reducer loop model as an alternative. The stress reducer loop model makes everything way simpler because all addictions, stress reducer loops, can be categorized into one of three things. They're either a chemical, like alcohol or nicotine or caffeine, or they're a behavior like gambling or sex addiction or exercise, or they're a coping skill like, and the word I use is a self-sacrificing loop, but other people think of it as codependent. But they're coping strategies. Any of those things can turn into a stress reducer loop. So what happens in that model is they're all described the same way. The side effects might be different. So the side effects of alcohol are different than heroin or doing gambling or whatever, but the process is the same. And so I have the same vocabulary that I use for all those things and the same processes that I use for all those things. The answer is less stress, different stress reducers, and let's figure out how to make that work. That's the answer for everything. And
I agree. So we probably will need another show, but how can the people reach you? Thank you so much, by the way.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, so I have a website. It's called thelessstressdoc.com, right? So they can get on there. And then there's a whole chapter on worry that they can download for free. And then on there is also a course they can take, which kind of goes through the book in little 15-minute segments so that they can, if they're going to work, they can listen to it. And then what I found was when you're writing a book, you have to write it sort of generically because I don't know who's on the other side of the book, right? So I have to just kind of write it as if anybody's over there. But sometimes you need very individualized, taking what's in the book and individualizing it to you. And so what I do is I tell people, just email me at lessstressdoc@gmail.com, and then I can answer their questions specifically.
Well said. Stay on the line. Thank you, everybody, for joining my show. Take care, be safe, and I'll be back on here in a bit. Bye. Hold on.